Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained. We've got a fun episode coming your way today. Today, we're going to be talking about what is quite possibly, and of course, my always amazing co host, Mr. Roger Stokes, is with me. And so, we're going to talk today about easily what I think, Roger, is probably the biggest news to hit the UFO slash UAP topic since December of 2017, when the New York Times published that now legendary article wherein the United States government actually admitted that UAPs or UFOs are real and that they have been investigating them. And of course, we're talking about a whistleblower named David Grusch. So, Raj, we're going to talk a little bit about him. And so to get started, what's kind of your just real quick takeaway of what has happened just a couple of days ago? This amazing testimony that seemed to come out of nowhere, and it's literally taken not just the UFO uh, community and enthusiasts by storm. It's kind of really it's coming to the mainstream media consciousness now because it's that big of a story, even more so, I would say, than what I remember the New York Times article in 2017 being. What say you on that?
Yeah, well, welcome everybody. Definitely here to talk about. I think this is really, you could say, earth-shattering news, and I appreciate everybody tuning in. I so kind of two thoughts that come to mind first is number one, like this news revelation really did like shock the world, so to speak, right? Um, I don't think anybody had any really advanced notice of this coming, right? There wasn't anything leaked. It's not like um, Mr. Grush was talking to all these people, right, or whatnot. So so the revelation in and of itself was just like it disrupted the news cycle, and I think you know when I was looking at it and starting to read, and we've talked about this before, Jim, when like him coming out and doing this, number one, I'm very happy to see, right? Because of the whistleblower protection that was signed into law by President Biden, offering those protections. And while so number one, like this, I think this will be a record week as we look back, within the UAP UFO community. And like you and I have talked about before, I mean, this is awesome news. Am I surprised at the news, or is this a major revelation to like you and I, like, oh my gosh, we never knew this? No, I think it just confirms what we already know, that number one, the US government and governments across the world have been conducting covertly, UFO surveillance, and they have these secret programs. And we've all speculated, especially since Roswell, that the US government indeed does collect and retrieve UFO craft. And as we talked about a little bit earlier, I think the subject that I want to jump into a little bit more that has a lot of people probably a little bit more on edge because of background, culturally, religious, right? That there are non-human, non-terrestrial beings that have, the pilots of these craft that are in possession of the US government. And to me, that revelation is that's amazing. And I know people want to talk about like, oh, well, show us the proof. Let us see these crafts. Let us see these people, right? But that I think will eventually come out, right? But
Right.
it's going to take a while for, as we talked about pre-show here, with government and things like that, Lou Elizondo, right? Like that rock is just beginning to start rolling down the hill. And like this is laying the foundation for people to feel comfortable in coming forward. And hopefully we start, this is the beginning of more disclosure from people. They have those protections from the law, and that more, I guess, information starts coming out and people feel comfortable in sharing. But I'm really curious to, what are your thoughts on David, Mr. Grush, because his background, Let's talk about that first. What do you think about his background?
Near as I can tell, all the information that's available publicly on him, and there is quite a bit. He seems to be every bit as credible and somebody who um, would his position that he held within the government put him in a position to know information like this? And the answer to that is yes. So this is somebody who wasn't, just simply passing through a facility somewhere in some, secret part of the country, who just, happened to catch something. This is a guy who really would know the provenance of this information. Now, the things that about him that impressed me in his interview that he did with Ross Coulthart on News Nation, was it? I think was the media
Yes.
outlet.
Yeah.
Um, and admittedly, I truthfully don't know much about News Nation, so I don't know. Um, they I think they do have Chris Cuomo, and that's a bit of a strike in my book against them. Just because I was never a fan of Chris Cuomo when he was on CNN, but that's another story for a different day. But that notwithstanding, I think the fact that a couple things that we have to look at here, a couple of points that a lot of the skeptics and debunkers don't seem to want to be focusing on a lot, is the fact that he went through all of the proper channels, back channels and otherwise, for getting this information, um, having Congress and the people that actually have the authority to do something to follow up about his testimony. He followed all of the proper channels. He's not somebody who seems to be like, hey, I want to, do this as a gesture of self-aggrandizement. I want to make sure that I have a job on the lecture circuit for the next 40 years. He does not at all strike me as that kind of a person. And of course, that's some of the criticism that the usual suspects are lobbing at David Grusch. I think his credibility, and I know there's going to be people that are going to disagree with even this comparison, but I think he's every bit as credible as, Lou Elizondo, Jay Stratton. Those are two guys that were literally in the thick of things, that worked for the government, and their whole focus when they were working for the government was UAPs and, the this technology that seems to exist that we don't have any accounting for. And so I would put David Grusch, near as I can tell so far. He seems to be very credible, very on the level. Again, I'd put him right up there, his credibility, with somebody like a Jay Stratton, whose credibility, at least, is in my opinion unassailable. It's really, he has the resume, and everything seems to check out. The manner in which that David Grusch conducted himself, I'm not a body language expert. I'm not even going to begin to try to say, well, his body language said this during the interview, and um, that to me is kind of irrelevant in all this. To me, it is what was the substance? How articulate was he? How um, and for me, he checked off all the boxes. And that's why I think his testimony is really, I can't think of anything else to compare it to significance wise, is except for maybe that 2017 article from the New York Times. I think that Grush is the real deal. And um, I think there's probably a lot of people in the back channels, people that have been working to keep this topic, uh, the most closely guarded state secret, perhaps since the Manhattan Project. And you always hear people say, well, a secret that big would be impossible for the U.S. government to keep because there are leaks. Well, there were no leaks about the Manhattan Project, and truly, I mean, especially if we're looking at what has been alleged, which is that most of this has been moved into the private sector. So understand, a lot of this stuff, that used to perhaps be under the government's stewardship, and probably still is to some extent, but Freedom of Information Act, they needed to come up with something that would make this information so well shielded against the Freedom of Information Act request. And what better way to do that than to put all of it into the private sector? So, um, private companies, defense contractors are probably the ones that have this material, and these non-human entities, these non-human beings, they're probably the ones that actually have these in their possession, for that very reason, so that they aren't subject to congressional um, oversight, or whatever you want to call it, as in at least to the same extent that a government or military organization would have to be that accountable to Congress. So again, it's such a multifaceted issue. This stuff that David Grusch has come out with, um, it literally covers the whole gamut. I mean, I think most reasonable people that believe that there has been a cover up would agree that the government and whoever it is that's pulling the strings, call them the deep state, whatever term you want to use, they've been very effective at keeping the bulk of this hidden. And I think we're going to find out to some extent that perhaps a lot of the mainstream media has been complicit in this, and maybe that's another reason why a lot of organizations have been really slow to really kind of give this the due attention that it deserves. And I think that's the thing. I think this is really, and I've been talking about it with my wife in these terms. I think this is potentially the first major domino to fall. If this is really, if everything that Grush has talked about really is authentic, and I'm leaning toward the fact that everything he said is authentic. And I say that because there's a lot of other credible sources and people that I place a fair amount of faith in, that have been saying these same exact things for years. And like you talked about, Roger, the thing that made all of this possible was the National Defense Authorization Act bill of 2023, which President Biden signed into law at the end of last year, that now affords whistleblowers protection for against reprisal. But here's the thing: David Grush has been retaliated against, and that's another thing that is going to cause heads to roll once this review is being done. And I hope, if there's one thing that I hope Congress can really truly get their act together on, we've learned that in the last couple of days, the House of Representatives are going to be holding a hearing on
Yep.
Grush's testimony. That's unprecedented, and especially if it ends up being an open hearing, I would love to have this guy come and testify in open session in Congress, and have him just spill the beans, because once that is out of the bag and you have such a forum like that, I don't think it's ever going to go back to the way things used to be as far as the UFO cover up and all that goes. So that's my typical verbose way of of answering your simple question, Rogers. I do think David Grush is credible, and I think this is potentially the biggest news, certainly within the UFO UAP realm. And I guess my question to you for the next topic is, how do you think some people are going to be reacting to this? I myself think that a lot of people, the bulk of people in the United States and perhaps in the world, that have taken an active interest in this, are probably going to view it either with absolute open arms, and they're going to welcome it and they're going to celebrate it. And a lot of people are going to be like, well, okay, tell me something I don't already know. I mean, so many people have believed for so long that UFOs are real, and that there have been occupants in them. But let's talk for a moment about the people who maybe, for want of a better term, have something to lose by the truth coming out. And by that, I don't mean the government or perhaps the private sector corporations and organizations that may have been playing a role in keeping all of this, under wraps for 90 plus years. We're learning. I mean, let's talk about that. What are your thoughts on how certain segments of our population are going to receive this news if it is in fact verified?
Yeah, that is a really good question to jump down into. I think, you know, we as a society, both here and around the world, like there are, depending on where you're from and where you grew up, there's a lot of different cultures out there that have different beliefs. And I think probably one of the biggest, I think, group of people that could potentially be affected are faith-based people, right? People that believe, um, you know, in God or some type of creator of the earth, right? That, if you follow the traditional, Christian Bible, and even the other different works from the religions around there that have, very similar views, how does this, you have to look at how does this information impact your views of, the earth being created, that, you know, humanity, has grown upon this earth, right? And that, you throw out the idea that, wait a minute, we are not alone in this universe, that there are other beings out there that actually are way more advanced than us, that have been visiting the earth for a long, long time. We've recovered these things, right? How does that impact into somebody's beliefs? I think that there are two notions to that. One, I think people would be like, no, I absolutely, like, if there is a creator, right? And that's something that you believe in, that just as evidenced on Earth, right? Like there's not only humans, but we have so many varieties of animals and different insects and things like that. So I think a lot of people, it's not a far stretch to say, like, well, yes, if there is a creator, of course they would create other people that would be inhabitants of planets and things like that. So and I can see some people saying, like, this absolutely goes into my culture, my beliefs. And then other people, I think, would do anything and everything to um, push that narrative in the opposite direction and deny that. Because I think that there's a lot of people that just don't believe. And if that actually were true, that changes the paradigm shift on some people's beliefs about the nature of the universe and our views on, God, a higher existence, a different plane of existence, on our technology. Are we alone in the universe? Are we not? Right. And um, not that I'm an expert on religions or anything like that, but I do feel, and people probably have different opinions than I do, but religion's a very powerful thing, and I think there are people that use it to control and to keep power over other people. That's not the case of every religion, but there are examples of that. And so I feel like if this information were to come out and be verified, you would have you'd have very active groups, right, trying to spread disinformation and saying this is false, it's not real. If you believe in this, right, like you're not going to be a part of our group. And there's I think there'd be a lot of shaming going on, and people just frankly being not following, right, the tenets of humanity, treating people like they should be treated, how you'd want to be treated. So it's an interesting, I guess, dichotomy of trying to figure out what people would believe. I know for me and my personal beliefs, and from what I was raised with and from the different things that I've experienced throughout my life, this information coming out, like, it's something that I've known and feel like to be true all along. So it's not a shocking revelation to me. Like, I definitely believe that we're not alone in the universe. So it just adds another layer of foundation that somebody, as you stated, a highly decorated military veteran working for the government that has everything to lose by coming out and making this statement would actually do that, right? again, it lays that foundation of this is what's going on, right? And hopefully more people will take that on. But at the end of the day, I think this topic is going to be super polarizing. So you're going to have people that are just going to flat out deny it and do everything that they can to spread disinformation about it and ridicule people about it, retaliate. And so that does what that, I mean, as it always has, it makes people hesitant to come forward because you don't want to be known as that crazy person that believes in these fringe ideas. But at the same time, ever since the 2017 story that came out, like this topic has become more mainstream. People, academics, scientists that, have great backgrounds are coming out and talking more about this. So I really think that we're going to see more revelations coming. And I think it's incumbent upon us as people involved with that, as a society, to really help people focus on the facts, understand what's disinformation, what's not, to keep the conversation alive. We don't want to engage in a battle of, fighting against people and calling them out or name calling people that are doing those types of things to us. So definitely take the high road. Kind of what I am thinking, but it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I guess to sum that up, it's a polarizing topic. You're going to have a faction that absolutely believe it's not, it's like the super excited like you and I. This just lays one more layer of knowledge that we already know to be there. And then there are those people that are just going to categorically deny and then go on the attack, right? If you say something right, we're going to get, people could listen to our podcast and be like, these guys are absolutely insane. They're the ones spreading disinformation. How do they know they're not credible? And, we just have to take that in stride and really stick to what we know. And, we can always speculate on what things that we do know, what we hope to know. But at the end of the day, I think that as a community, we need to stick together and help people understand. It's a huge paradigm shift for people. And I think as more revelations come forth, a lot of people are going to be in shock and, we need to help people. So
I completely agree. And for my 2 cents on that particular question, I know myself. I know at least a dozen people that are friends and or close colleagues of mine who are they're practicing Christians, and they have outright told me that they cannot accept the possibility that we have extraterrestrial visitation that has happened or continues to happen. Their religious worldview, which is obviously everybody's worldview is influenced. If you're any kind of a person of faith, your faith is going to form some part of what your worldview is. It's unavoidable. Whether even if you're an atheist, that's still going to factor into your worldview on things such as this. And these people have told me that to them, if there's any substance to it at all, it's got to be demons. It's got to be, Satan, because God would not allow there to be other intelligent creatures or beings that are more advanced than humans are. They've been taught, and I really don't like throwing other denominations under the bus, but that to me seems a little, myopic of a view to have, that, human beings are the be all end all. I mean, that's kind of like the old, think back to the 1500s when the general accepted view was that the earth was the sun revolved around the earth and not vice versa. It falls into the same category as people that are flat earthers, in my opinion. And for those people, for something like this, if it ever gets to be proven beyond any shadow of a doubt, it is going to turn their world upside down, and it is going to make them question everything that they have ever been taught. There's going to be some people that will react with hostility, with open hostility. Um, and there's going to be, there's going to be people like you and I that are going to be kind of like, well, we've kind of believed this all along, and now we're just getting confirmation of what we believed all along. And so for people like you and I, it's not really going to impact the way we view the world, the way we view the universe, the way we view our existence. It's going to, if anything, just kind of, fortify what we've already always believed about the nature and scope of the universe and the nature of creation, what have you. And I think a lot of people are going to be in the same boat as you and I. They're going to view it that way. I think there's going to be yet another segment of society that are going to look at it as, okay, great. So um, there's aliens and we have them and they've been visiting Earth and all these things. But what does that do about the fact that I'm still paying $5 a gallon for gasoline? What does that do? That doesn't change the fact that I still can't afford groceries. That still doesn't change the fact that I got to figure out how to maintain a roof above my head for my family. And that's I mean, that is reality for some people. Um, and so there are some people that are just going to take a look at this and go, "Oh, that's nice," and just go back about their daily lives. It's just not going to create so much as a ripple in quote unquote their reality and their worldview. And so we have to take that into account, I think, as well. But I do think that there is going to be some people that if this all is proven to be true, which I suspect it probably is, then it's going to really the news is going to be devastating for some people. They're not going to know how to handle it. I think there's going to be an awful lot of uh, you touched upon it, Roger, and it's kind of a loaded subject. This subject of religion, which is why I usually try to avoid talking about it at all costs because it's such a polarizing and divisive issue.
Yes.
Even even among Christians, there are Christians. There are some Christians that think that other denominations are not even Christians. I mean, heck, you and I have been accused of that all of our lives, right?
Yep.
So people have their own little box that they like to fit other people into. And when things come along that doesn't fit inside of their clearly defined box or their expectations, they react with hostility. They react with animosity, and they react with all manner of things that are completely counterproductive to really making any kind of meaningful progress. And it's unfortunate, but we've been told. In fact, we've talked about this in previous podcasts that we've done, Roger. Last year at Phenomicon, I asked Travis Taylor outright. I said, is there any truth to the rumors that there's actually a faction of officials in the Pentagon that don't want this UAP and UFO topic studied because they think it's all demonic and satanic? And much to my surprise, Travis Taylor said absolutely. He said there is actually a group of officials in the Pentagon, some of them very high ranking, that are, they what do they call themselves, Rod? Was it the Christian Army or God's Army or some
Something.
kind of some kind of moniker like that? And that's part of the obstacle that people like Lou Elizondo and I'm sure Jay Stratton have had to contend with trying to get some of this information out there. Um, so I think there's going to be pushback, not just from within the people that stand a lot to lose, because that's another facet we have to consider, Raj, is who stands to lose the most from this news coming out. And I think for me, the answer is obvious. It's the what people call the deep state. It's what the people that have been guarding the secret. Why have they been guarding the secret, particularly if it's something that has been happening not just in our country, but the former Soviet Union and China and Italy? That was one of the big revelations about this Grusch testimony, was the UFO recovery in 1933 in Italy. I mean, we're learning that, as a lot of people have suspected, the modern UFO era did not really begin in 1947 with Roswell. It happened long before that, particularly the stuff that's coming out now, the allegations of this crash that happened in Italy in 1933 that Mussolini got his hands on, that eventually ended up in the hands of the Nazis, which then eventually, presumably, landed in the possession of the United States at the end of World War II. So, another group that stands to lose a lot from quote unquote the truth coming out is, I think, the organizations and the people that have fought tooth and nail to keep this, swept under the rug for 90 plus years. I mean, we're talking generations of cover up and generations of purposeful uh, deceit and obfuscation, and all in the name of national security. I mean, I guess I would want to know why it would be a matter of national security if we are just as in the dark and lost about all of this as presumably, the Russians would be, the Chinese, the North Koreans, whomever. So I think that military industrial complex, or that military industrial apparatus that we always hear about, that President Eisenhower warned about in his farewell address back in the 50s or 60s. I think that is also that group stands to lose a lot with this information coming out as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back to my comment around people and the power that they have. And it's over. I mean, it's been demonstrated in history over and over again, right? Knowledge is power. And if you take away that knowledge from people, um, and prevent people from continuing to learn or not understand what we have and how the world works, right? People are a lot, they're easier to control. They're easier to, be susceptible to, like, hey, what we're telling you is the truth, right? If you grow up and somebody tells you that an apple is an orange when you're an adult, you're calling that apple an orange, right? But hopefully you wouldn't have been taught in school, like orange is an orange and apple's an apple, right? And you can identify these things. And I definitely, the first thing that I think of is, if I were in a government position or part of the military, right? Especially with the U.S. military industrial complex, we've been known throughout the world to have like one of the most, fiercest, most advanced fighting forces on the earth, right? And unfortunately, instead of, again, like this stems from a lot of different things, so I won't go into that, but as a country and from a military standpoint, if we do reverse engineer, if we have access to this, right, that gives us a technological advantage over our enemies here on the earth, right? And so I can see people that would heavily guard that and take that and keep it a secret because we don't want that to fall in the hands of our enemies. At the same time, like I have never seen anything, and I don't think you've seen anything where like these spacecraft or these UAPs, they've done nothing. It's not like in Hollywood where you've got these big alien crafts all of a sudden coming down and blowing up major things around the world like Independence Day and other movies. There's no, I haven't seen that any of these people, or I would say extraterrestrials, if you want to believe that, mean the human race harm. I mean, there have been encounters and stuff about, something we should talk about later, with alien abductions and things that have happened to people. But overall, I think it comes down to that control, right? Like, hey, if we have this technology, that means we in the world as a country, we stay number one, right? And we can police the world with that. It's almost like we have this, I guess, I don't know, understanding, or, we're telling ourselves like we can't use this for the advancement of humanity or for the betterment of our planet or for all people, right? It's government saying like, nope, we're going to use this for our military so we can take care of our people, our country, our defense. And I think that's why we spend so much money, with the military industrial complex, and why it just keeps going over and over. But yeah, to me, that is why there's so much disinformation from governments around the world, because they want that technological advantage. They want the military advantage. And I don't know. I'd like to get your thoughts on this, but you think at least the history of our modern world, and I mean, in all cultures going back, thousands and thousands of years, we have seen, or people have talked about alien crafts, UFOs, different things that um, show that, I guess, there have been unexplained phenomenon for a long time. But really, if you look at, especially after the invention of the atomic bomb, um, UFO activity really picked up then. And from then to now, compared to the rest of history, how fast has technology grown? It's exponentially, like almost
exponentially.
year over year, it just gets better and better and faster. And we're capable of doing so much. That, to me, that's not a coincidence. I mean, I feel strongly that there has been a lot of reverse engineering done and information shared and pulling these things out, especially um, in our understanding of, mathematics and how things work, and just our ability to put satellites around the earth, right? To communicate globally. I can pick up a phone, you could be over in China, and I could just call you instantly, right? I mean, the technology is just, it's incredible at the rate of how fast technology works. And it's not a coincidence that, in the first, like you look at history for a long time and it's just slowly, slowly evolving. And then you get into the mid 1900s and boom,
Yeah,
it just, and I feel strongly that that has to do with a lot of the reverse engineering, these covert groups getting their hands on things that have put us into this. And so, like you said earlier, right? A lot of this stuff is going to be protected. A lot of the stuff coming out from private companies, right, are protected by company laws and, you know,
copyright, intellectual property. Yeah.
intellectual properties. And yeah, it's amazing that yeah, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised that a lot of the private sector have access to this. It's probably a lot of it's compartmentalized, so people only know what they're supposed to know. But again, right, that's where the money is being pushed into. That's what it's highly guarded secrets. And right now, just because of the way the world is and the power dynamic, the wealth dynamic, it's until we get to a point as a civilization that we care about everybody across the world and we want to take care of people and money's not an issue, right? It's going to continue to be a closely guarded secret. People are going to do everything that they can to keep that, to remain in power, to push that agenda, in my opinion.
I think you're spot on. Remember, I think it was who was it, Major Philip Corso, who of course has long since passed away, but um, he was one of the first people that made the allegation that a lot of the modern conveniences that we have that we take for granted, like Velcro, and transistors, the transistor radio. Go back to the end of World War II. There wasn't those things weren't in existence, but yet, like you said, from say the end of World War II up until even the mid 1980s, there was such a massive leap forward in technological advancement. So, is it at all out of the realm of reason to put forth the theory that maybe some of that technological advancement was helped along by technology that was recovered that was more advanced than we have and that was reverse engineered? I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility at all. But in the same breath, I will also say that I think a lot of it can be tallied up to human ingenuity. We're not exactly a stupid species. I mean, a lot of us are. I mean, I'm a Raiders fan. What can you do there? But but you know, I think that it's not at all out of the realm, particularly when we're dealing with like stealth technology. Um, Obviously, now we're in the age of artificial intelligence as well, which brings a whole nother kind of baggage to things. But um, yeah, I think that the state secrets that have been kept on this technology and the mechanisms that have had to be put in place to keep it uh, so safely guarded, not just within our country, but quite obviously throughout other industrialized nations throughout the world that have probably had similar incidents, excuse me. So uh, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility at all. And I think, you know, as we touched upon a moment ago regarding intellectual property and copyright, um, there there's certainly motivation for a lot of these organizations that if they have had in their possession this technology as to why they'd want to keep it, keep it closely safeguarded. So you can't fault them for that. But I remember, and I know I keep referring to Lou Elizondo a lot, but Lou has been the one who's kind of been leading the charge on a lot of this since 2017, where the term that he used was, there are some people that when the truth comes out, they're going to want to extract a pound of flesh from the government. Because let's take into consideration, there are countless people whose stories we've been told about, whose lives have been ruined, who have been, in some instances, murdered, permanently silenced because they have come too close to the truth or they have threatened to expose the truth. Um, and quite obviously, there's black organizations, off the books projects and organizations that are going to be held accountable for this. And at what point is there going to be some kind of an amnesty involved? Because you are going to have people who clearly violated constitutional laws and protocol. There are going to be massive civil rights violations, I think, that have occurred, especially if we find out, some of the more out there, at least to me, the more out there aspects of the UFO phenomenon where we're dealing with abductions, and there's all these legends that, back in the 1950s or 1960s, there was some kind of a pact that was made between the United States government and whatever extraterrestrial species was here to exchange technology for human experimentation. And obviously, there's a lot of accounts of people who claim to have experienced alien abduction that, there's some pretty horrible stories out there. Betty and Barney Hill. I'm still not sure where I sit on the alien abduction aspect of it, but there
Right.
are some that I absolutely believe. Travis Walton is one who I had the chance to talk to Travis Walton face to face at Phenomicon and talk to him for a fair amount of time, and I could see and look into his eyes. That guy was telling me the truth as he recalls it, as he perceived it, and I 100% believe Travis Walton's story. I also believe that there is a great deal of credibility to Betty and Barney Hill's um, experience that they had that has been chronicled so well since the 1960s. Um, there's also some that I have a really hard time wrapping my head around and saying, okay, yeah, I believe that, I accept that, but not to the extent that I'm willing to discount alien abductions outright. I think there has been something to it. There appears to be, in some instances, some kind of government, involvement or collusion behind some of these abduction experiences. The same thing with cattle mutilations. Ryan Skinner, I remember reading a post that he made on social media, I think last year, where he made a pretty good case that there's at least some compelling evidence that maybe some of the cattle mutilations that have been reported throughout the years maybe have been conducted by some, kind of, secret military government op of some kind to track the food supply or something like that. So there's all these little offshoots of the overall UFO UAP umbrella, you would say, that are going to need to have a full accounting. Alien abduction is a big one, and again, there are people who are alleged to have been, seriously harmed, have had their lives ruined, their careers ruined, they've ended up in jail or prison, or worse, they've been, murdered by these, men in black, for want of a better term.
Right, right, yeah,
So, and certainly there's all kinds of accounts of intimidation. Speaking of men in black, there's that's kind of like one of the things that these mysterious people do is they're all about intimidation, and they don't really identify themselves other than kind of giving off that vibe that they're borderline menacing. All the accounts that we've heard from people going back to Roswell, where that if they threaten to say anything, that's a pretty wide open desert out there, and somebody could mysteriously disappear. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And of course, anytime you hear a story like that, this is not what the government or the military is supposed to do. You don't intimidate. You don't threaten the very people that you are sworn to protect and defend.
right.
So there's going to need, again, if all of this, and it's still at this point, let's be honest, this is still a big what if, but this is certainly the farthest we've actually been able to venture into this topic in such a credible way with David Grusch's testimony. But these are all things that are going to have to eventually have a day of reckoning on. All of these kind of the darker side of the UFO subject is going to have a day of reckoning. And I think that's, the people that have been playing a role in that will, if that day comes, are gonna have to, is Congress going to have to offer amnesty or immunity to some of those people that will come forward and say, yes, I was one of those people who participated in, what's the name of that guy that Richard Doty is famous for deceiving, the guy down in was it New Mexico, down in Dulce or whatever.
Yeah,
And there was I can't think of the guy's name offhand. I know it's going to come to me after the show, but people who were purposely fed disinformation to feed their um I don't know what the term is I'm looking for. They were basically being strung along on purpose to distract from really getting too close to the truth. And it was a total psyop on this guy, and it basically led to his death. And that's it's stuff like that. I mean, how can somebody in good conscience do that to another person? And this is somebody who was acting under the sworn duty of the United States of America, and that
right.
I think we're going to find a lot of circumstances like that when all of this comes to light. So you take all that into consideration, there's a lot of people that have everything to lose. There are people who are in these positions of power, and again, call them the deep state, call them, black ops, whatever you want to call them, they stand to lose everything. It's not just the religious fundamentalists that have, something to lose out of the truth coming forward. There's a lot of people who are very powerful who have everything to lose, and that is why um, I think it's going to be an uphill battle still. Even though this has been a major development, and still we don't know. This could be this may end up going nowhere because quite ultimately you have to have other people come forward to corroborate the testimony. Now, we are told that there are other people that have come forward to back up and substantiate what David Grusch has claimed. But until that happens in front of Congress, and I think this is going to be one issue which we've already seen, Raj. Anybody that has a pulse that lives in the United States or elsewhere in the world knows that our country, the United States of America, is so politically divided and culturally divided right now, perhaps more than any other time prior to the Civil War breaking out in the 1800s. There are people that are so tribal in their viewpoints on politics and culture in this country, but yet in Congress, which is, a lot of people would argue Congress is responsible for a lot of causing or at least perpetuating a lot of that division. But this is one issue where we have seen both major parties come together and actually want to, bring this out into the open. Senator Gillibrand from New York, from my home state, Senator Marco Rubio. These are people who political ideologies could not be farther apart. Representative Tim Burchett from Tennessee. I mean, there are people in Congress that I just wouldn't give the time of day to. But I applaud people in Congress in both parties that have really kind of taken up the mantle on this and are really trying to hold the military and other aspects of government accountable, hold their feet to the fire, as it were. And I think that, it's going to be a good thing if we can truly unite Congress. If people can see that our lawmakers, the people that have the power to really make stuff happen, I think if they can see that kind of unification going on in Washington, D.C. on this particular topic, that's going to go a long way. And I think it's going to really resonate with a lot of people. Maybe not with everyone, and maybe not even with the majority of people. But I think that's an aspect and a perspective that we cannot understate the importance of, is the fact that it is an issue that seems to have bipartisan support. And that's a very rare thing in Washington, D.C. these days. So I'm cautiously optimistic with the progress that has been made so far. And I do have to make one complaint, though. Obviously, amid all this, Roger, there has been, of course, NASA did a recent public hearing, their first, I think maybe ever, on the topic of UFOs. And that was preceded by another congressional hearing on the UFO UAP matter. And just as we suspected, there was going to be a whole lot, it was a whole lot of nothing, basically. It was basically saying, yes, there are still some aerial anomalies that are still unclassified, that are unexplainable, but for the most part, nothing to see here, folks. And they went to great pains to say, we have seen nothing that indicates the presence or existence of exotic off-world technology. Well, here's the interesting thing that a lot of people may not understand about this. Of course, the office that Congress set up is called AARO, which I think stands for All Domain Anomalous Resolution Office or something like that. And this gentleman by the name of Dr. Kirkpatrick is the person who's heading that organization, or at least is the public mouthpiece for it. And the interesting thing is that now that the whistleblower protection has been in place, we've heard dozens of people that have come forward, like David Grusch, that have given testimony saying, yes, these legacy UFO programs like Roswell really do exist, and they really did happen. And we really did recover exotic off-world, or at least non-human technology, along with non-human occupants, and the thing is they didn't give that office. They did not grant the AARO office what they call Title 50, which is the authorization to have access to all those, above classified, black programs, special ops programs that most people, I mean, we're talking if the stories are being believed, these legacy UFO programs, there is like at any given time no more than a dozen people actively working in positions within the government or the military that even know about these things. So when the government says, we have no record, we have no account, they're technically telling you the truth, because those things are so compartmentalized that they don't want the department heads, they don't want the joint chief of staff, they don't want the vice admirals and the generals, and they don't want those people knowing about it, because those people, as far as they're concerned, just like the president, are temporary employees. They have a term, a specified period of time that they are holding that position of power. So you have, let's assume that Roswell really happened the way that it was portrayed. And right now, more so than ever, that seems to be the case. I've always kind of been somewhere in the middle on Roswell. I don't think there's any question that something crashed outside of Roswell in New Mexico back in 1947. Um, I credit Greg Lawson, whose book, his Roswell book, uh, the one that you and I have read, and we heard Greg talk about at Phenomicon last year. He basically, his conclusion was that there was definitely a cover up that happened in Roswell. What were they covering up? We don't know. We really don't know. But we do know quite obviously that the whole Project Mogul connection, which became the official story, is absolute BS, because Project Mogul didn't even get planned and executed until 5 years after the Roswell crash, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a lot of things that just don't add up in the government's uh, official story about Roswell. So if we're to assume that these famous legacy UFO incidents like Roswell and Kecksburg and Cape Girardeau and Gulf Breeze, these really well-known UFO stories, if they're true, at any given time, you're only going to have a very minute number of people that are going to be read into those programs, because it's need to know. They're called, special access programs, unacknowledged special access programs. And because of the nature of that, anybody that works in intelligence will tell you that by nature, intelligence has to be compartmentalized. In other words, you can only have a certain number of people that really truly have the whole picture of what each individual compartment and component in this project is doing. You don't want the guy that works on this to know precisely what this guy over here is doing, and that's part of the reason why I lend a little bit of credence to Bob Lazar's story, talking about how compartmentalized it was. And the the sad thing is that that's actually, the government has been shooting itself in the foot. If it's really had access to this exotic technology and they've been trying to reverse engineer it, then the smartest thing to do would be to put it out there in the open market. And when I say open market, I'm talking make that information accessible so that the greatest minds in the country can have access to it. That the greatest engineers, chances are, don't work for the government. Some of the
Right.
brightest minds that are out there are people that are working in universities or in various laboratories throughout the world. They're not all contracted to work for the government. And you never know, you may have some genius that's 18, 19-year-old kid just graduated from high school that has figured out what maybe the best scientists and engineers for the government haven't been able to figure out for the past 90 years. Maybe there's some kid out there, or some middle-aged guy like me who does have the missing pieces of the puzzle and is able to put it together. But when you're hiding that technology, I've heard so many people refer to it as the lost century, because of all the technology that has potentially been lost and been hidden. Technology that can literally change the face of our society as far as energy goes. Having access to zero point energy that is completely clean and completely, I mean, I don't even think renewable energy is even applicable, because it's just naturally occurring around us all the time. The ability to create and manipulate gravity, which is what some of these things seem to be able to do. The technology for canceling inertia, when stuff is moving. I mean, it's just there's so many layers to this, and so yeah. Again, apologies for being so verbose in my response, but there's just so many layers to this, and it's why I think it's going to truly be, like you were saying, Roger. It's going to be a real, true paradigm shift if this ends up being what we suspect and what some of us hope that it is, which is the first domino to fall in what has been the most closely guarded secret, perhaps of all time, and something that, if it ends up being true, is truly the single most amazing and noteworthy, newsworthy discovery in the history of humanity. I mean, it really is. I mean, that's the way I view it. I don't know what you think about it, but I think that the ramifications of this are just astounding. And like Travis Taylor has told us so many times about Skinwalker Ranch, the things that they have witnessed, all this stuff, it breaks your reality. I mean, what you define as your reality, our shared consciousness that we have in this thing we call life, there are aspects about this that completely shatter our notions of what reality is, what consciousness is, what reality is. And I think that's a whole other layer. I mean, we could probably talk for days about this, but that's just my takeaway from it.
Yeah, no, 100% agreed. There's I think we're entering into that age now where, again, like information and news travels so fast, and with the whistleblower protection there, I truly believe we're going to see more and more people that are going to come forth that have great credentials, that are going to back up other people. And uh, I think once that ball gets rolling and heading down the hill, it's just going to pick up more speed until right it hits and explodes, and we're just going to get overload of everything that we've thought about, hoped, believed is going to be confirmed. And I I definitely think we're sitting on the precipice of at least in our modern day of you know this exciting news. It's historical. um like I think back in 2017 when that news article broke, and Lou Elizondo talking about this stuff, and we've got images now from the military engaging off the coast of California there. The tic tac videos, the gimbal video, and more of these things are just coming out, and more people are willing to you know talk about those things. And it's very interesting having that conversation last year with the head guy of UAPX
Yeah,
or UAX.
Gary Voorhees.
Yeah, Gary Voorhees. He's like it was really cool to talk to him and get his take and see, I mean, he was there firsthand. And like when you're talking to these people, it's not like you're talking to somebody like you went and you're like, okay, this guy is literally crazy, right? Like he's just right out there. These are just regular people carrying on a conversation, are very smart, they're educated. And again, I feel that even though like this past week it's been 5 days since this news broke, but it's interesting to me that it hasn't picked up more like mainstream across the world as a like headline news. It's almost as if, and I don't know if this is true or not, so I'm not saying like there's a targeted campaign in the media to keep it pushed down or whatnot. But I really feel like as we look back, like this is a red letter moment in history. This is something that's huge, and the implications of it are life altering,
Yeah,
right? To to actually say that on our planet, our little planet, this rock in the edge of our or edge of our galaxy in our solar system. I mean, we've gone to the moon. We've sent out, satellites and probes and things like that that have, looked at all the planets in our solar system. Like, definitively, the foundation has been set to say categorically, here's the proof: there is life beyond Earth, right?
Yeah.
We're not alone in the universe, and that is like one of the most amazing things in history. And I really hope that we start talking about it more, and that people like David Grusch will come forward, and back each other up, and that we can get that information, because you know there's so much more to life than what we have right now. And we're just, I don't even think, like, we're the very, very, very tip of that iceberg, right? Of understanding our reality and how we work within it. And I mean, theories that have been just theories are now being proved. And, what we didn't think possible 100 years ago is now possible. And so, again, I do hope that we get more people, especially across the media and in the government, to acknowledge that this stuff is very, very real, and that we get more transparency, and eventually the actual, like, here, there you go, like, life altering. We're not alone. And we're not alone. We have people that have visited, that are visiting, right? And again, I know it sounds crazy to talk about, even just hearing me, like, okay, there are people from other worlds, because you and I, we can't just hop on a ship and space, bend space and time, and then we're in a different galaxy, and talking to people on a different planet. That's just not, I mean, that's science fiction, but based on everything, like, that's why I love Star Trek, Star Wars, things like that, because it just puts into view, like, this stuff is possible, and
Yeah.
we just don't know how to do it yet. And maybe we do, and it's just being a very closely guarded secret, and eventually that'll come out. But at the end of the day, red letter moment, with David Grusch and his interview and what he has to say. And I'm looking forward to people coming out and corroborating that, and really opening that up, because yeah, I want to see the transparency. It would be nice to see some of that stuff, like, right now, but I don't think that is going to happen anytime soon. That government's going to be like, come to our exhibit and look at this, what we have, right? It's going to be a process, but I think this has the ball rolling. It's super exciting.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. What I want to do now is just really there are a couple of people on Twitter that I follow, with the Soul of the Unexplained Twitter account. Um, People who I think, I the way they conduct themselves in the public forum, the the passion and the energy that they show. Uh, these are some of the people that I have a great deal of respect for. And some of those people would be like Micah Hanks of the Debrief, of course, Lou Elizondo. Got to give a shout out to Joe Merja, um, some of the Skinwalker Ranch guys, including Chris Bartell. Uh, you know, but one in particular, there's a tweet that was made yesterday afternoon on the 9th of June, and it kind of gives 12 major talking points for people that maybe didn't catch what David Grush's testimony was and what the big deal is. So this guy is Mike Colangelo, and I really enjoy his tweets. And so he kind of did a little synopsis, and I want to just kind of share with you what his 12 points were. And of course, Mike prefaces this tweet by saying that, of course, the accuracy of these statements and events remain to be seen. But he says, number one, pertaining to the the talking points of David Grush's testimony here. He says, number one, Grush claims that the U.S. is in possession of quote unquote quite a number of non-human craft. Number two, 12 to 15 craft, some fully intact and some are not. Some have landed, some we have caught, some have crashed. Three, there has been a 90 plus year non human craft retrieval cover up. Four, one non human craft retrieval took place in Italy in 1933, and the US took the craft in 1944. Five, there were cases where the craft landed and the occupants left the craft unoccupied. How about that? Six, there are occupants and the US is in possession of non human bodies. That's one of the biggest bombshells right there. Seven, there have been high level people, including generals, who have placed their hand on the craft. Eight, one source has said they have seen three different types of non human craft, so different shapes of UFOs. Nine, everything about these craft retrieval programs have been illegally withheld from Congress. 10, David Grusch has submitted classified information to Congress and the IC Inspector General, including two whistleblower complaints to the IC Inspector General, one about the hidden programs and one about reprisals, including 11 hours of testimony to Congress, all while he was under oath. 11, other intelligence officials have provided similar corroborating information both on and off the record. And so that was just a little brief summary that this Mike Colangelo, at Mike Colangelo on Twitter, anybody who wants to follow him, and I do recommend you follow him. He's a really great guy, near as I can tell, as far as putting out information out there. So those are some pretty significant talking points, Raj. This is the first time where somebody of David Grush's stature, and again, since perhaps Lou Elizondo or Jay Stratton, that has this level of credibility, that has come out and said there is really something to this, and all of the myths and all of the legends that we've heard about, there is truth to some of that. Now,
100%.
one thing that has to be clarified about what David Grusch has said is David Grusch, if I'm not mistaken, never came out in that testimony and actually said these non-human beings were of extraterrestrial origin. He just simply used the term non-human. So that leaves the door open to interpretation for they could very well be extraterrestrial. They could be from another planet, another solar system, what have you, elsewhere in the universe or the solar system. Or they could be interdimensional, right? Or there's also the possibility of, the one that I always go back to, which is the crypto-terrestrial or the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis, which Mac Tonys and the late Mac Tonys and also Hal Puthoff have put out there to the public in the last 15 to 20 years or so, where the things that we call aliens are actually a race of beings that have actually always been here on planet Earth, but for whatever reason have managed to keep themselves hidden from us through their advanced technology, but they've always been here on Earth with us. And so now that the cat is out of the bag, so to speak, where the conversation is now actually come into the public light from an intelligence official who would have knowledge of these programs, and says there are non-human beings, non-human entities that have been recovered. In fact, I think the way Grush phrased it in his interview on News Nation was, there are craft that have crashed, and as with airplanes or jets or anything else that is an aircraft, when it crashes, there are going to be pilots, there are going to be occupants that are recovered. Some of them are alive and some of them are dead. So that's exactly the way he phrased it. When these things crash, there are people inside. So there's also, that's I found that to be particularly fascinating. The way that he phrased that was that, you sometimes encounter dead pilots and dead occupants, and I don't think he specifically said that there were any living occupants that came into the custody of the United States or any other country, but it would stand to reason that there is. I mean, the other UFO case that has been getting a lot of attention, of course, is the Varginha uh, incident down in Brazil that James Fox has done an absolute amazing job of cataloging and chronicling, and documenting that incident that occurred in 1996 down in Brazil, where there were multiple living occupants, that were, by all eyewitness accounts, were not human, that were stereotypical, alien creatures that looked like something from, out of a science fiction movie or a comic book or something like that. So, um, I've always felt that there's always been something to this testimony from all of these various well documented legacy UFO incidents, and I think I really do think, Roger. I think this is what we may be witnessing here, and of course, only time will tell. But I think we are witnessing the first domino falling in the uh, collapse of the UFO secrecy. I think the big secret is finally going to be coming out, and like Lou Elizondo has told us, it's going to be a slow burn. It's not going to happen. I mean, he started telling us this, what, 2 3 years ago, and here we are. And now I think, also, as Lou said, that once that ball gets rolling, once that momentum gets started, even the strongest elements of the deep state will not be able to keep it down. They won't be able to stop the progress, because once something goes into the mainstream consciousness, it doesn't matter what kind of power and authority or how intimidating you can be, you cannot control everybody once that cat is out of the bag. And I think that's, if that is in fact what's going on with David Grusch. And again, I have to temper my enthusiasm by saying we still don't know. The fact that he's actually come forward and said these things, and the fact that very credible people have substantiated the things that he has said and vouched for his character and his integrity. Um, Again, I'm cautiously optimistic of how this is going to pan out. This is going to be the first real substantial progress that we're going to make. Now, how quickly that's going to happen, I can't say. And yes, to all the naysayers out there, you're absolutely right. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But understand what we're talking about here. We are talking about programs that, again, if these things are true, they have been so closely guarded that only a couple dozen people, perhaps over the last 90 years, really know that these things exist and really know the truth about this. So, getting that level of secrecy unveiled and revealed is not something there's going to be an easy task. It's not going to be something that somebody can say, it's not going to be a situation like WikiLeaks. It's not going to be like or the Eric Snowden thing, where it's going to be like, oh yeah, I walked out of this top secret facility with a flash drive that contains all the details on Roswell and all the details on this. I mean, it's not going to happen like that. That's the part that's fiction. When
Right.
stuff like this really starts to come out, there is going to be a process. It has to follow a specific process. And a big key role in that process is people like David Grusch, who are in a position to know, uh, who we are going to have to take, that leap of faith. And that's something that skeptics just can't afford. They can't afford to take that leap of faith and say, okay, let's, before I comment on this, let's give this some time. Let's see how this plays out. Because that's how I'm looking at it. I'm going to give this time. I do tend to believe what David Grush is saying, but am I going to believe it full stop at face value? No, I think only time will reveal exactly how forthcoming and how, because he may hit, even though this is now out, there still may be machinations in place that can still put the kibosh on this, you know? So,
Oh, yeah,
um,
for sure.
I'm just excited, and like I said on Jeff Freeman's podcast last night, what an exciting time to be alive. I mean, truly, um, to have something that is the greatest, one of the greatest mysteries of all time, potentially unfolding before our very eyes, and being able to be here to watch this happen for me is it's exciting. It's, I mean, how can you not get excited about it? And yeah, I have to temper that enthusiasm because it's still, there's still a lot that has to happen. But at the same time, I go back to something that um, a very dear friend of mine said to me one time, and that is, why do you need to rely on the government or the military to confirm that something is real? And he's absolutely right, because there's so many aspects of the government that are not transparent, that are misleading, and that are designed by their very nature to deceive and draw your attention away, sleight of hand, smoke and mirrors kind of thing. So, do I need the government or the military to confirm that these things are real? Not really, but does it help? At least from the standpoint of gaining credibility with the masses who really maybe don't pay attention to this on a regular basis, or people that have historically dismissed all this as hooey and nonsense, then from that aspect, yeah, it does matter when you get somebody like a David Grusch or a Lou Elizondo coming forward and revealing what they have encountered in their official capacities working for the government or the intelligence community. So, so that's kind of where I am. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm going to be watching this with great uh, enthusiasm and great focus to see where all of this goes. But so far, everything that I'm able to find out in my own research on David Grush, all of it seems to hold up under scrutiny. And again, only time will tell. But I'm cautiously optimistic. That's the best way that I can phrase it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I definitely, thinking about the whole X-Files, I want to believe and all that good stuff. Yeah, 100%. Uh, like you said, time will tell. And again, I think that, like it is a great time to be alive. We're seeing things unfold that I never thought would have unfolded in our lifetime. Um, so it's super exciting. And I just think that it'll continue to, you know, it'll be like once once that dam breaks, it's just gonna the floodwaters will just take over. And like you said, right, that it's gonna be pretty hard to contain. But again, yeah, cautiously optimistic, I think is a really, really good word. Um, right. Like for anybody listening, I would always say, don't just take our word for it. Don't
Dude,
believe because we believe something or somebody tells you to believe something. Do your research, right? And
yeah.
form your own opinion. Um, but yeah, I think that along with that and just taking a factual approach to it and saying like, I want to believe this. I think, this definitely stands up to the credibility test. Right. Again, time will tell. And we'll definitely be bringing more news. And I'm excited about this. And I think again, I'll just state this is the start of something that well, it's a continuation of the start of you know what happened in 2017 and even prior to that, and just getting more transparency and more people willing to come forward that have just amazing backgrounds. So I'm excited. I won't say that 100% I know this to be true, right? Like because I don't have that, I can't conclusively say that, but all signs point towards that what this gentleman is saying, David Grush, is truthful. I don't see any reason for him to lie. He has he has a lot of stake in the military, in his career. He's a decorated combat veteran. If he were to lie and it came out, right, that would just destroy his credibility, career. Like I don't see somebody with that much integrity doing something like that. Right along the lines of Dr. Travis Taylor and Skinwalker Ranch and Eric Bard, right? Like this, there's so much riding on this for them and their families, and it's not something that they take lightly. So, yeah, I'm hopeful and super excited to see what unfolds for the rest of this year and the news cycle and what continues to happen. Because I think we'll continue to get more and more stories. So,
I agree, Raj, and I one other caveat that I will caution people is be also on the lookout for, while this truth may be coming out, look also for classic misdirection. And I think a great case of this, and of course, this is pure speculation on my part, so I openly admit that, but my hunch is that that's what's happening with this incident that happened just a short while ago in Las Vegas that has just become into the a lot of the major news media are reporting on this about this allegation of a UFO that landed in Las Vegas, and uh, the 911 call that's now making the rounds where this young person is saying these things are not human. They're 8 feet tall, eight to 10 feet tall, and to me that sounds like a classic case of they want to like a wag the dog kind of scenario where the truth is about to come out, so the people that are in uh, and maybe and I'm not even suggesting that this family in Las Vegas are government plants or government agents. I'm just simply thinking that there are people that are going to try to capitalize and want to steal the thunder, so it were, as it were, and make these reports of things happening to draw focus and attention of where the real substance is. And I think what's happening here in Las Vegas, and again, that's just my own personal viewpoint. Um, that's just how it kind of feels to me, and that would be a classic tactic that government would use to distract while the real stuff is going on over here. But sleight of hand, they've got you paying attention to what this hand is doing while this hand is, doing something entirely different. So be on the lookout for incidents like that, because um, it just doesn't feel right. The stuff that's been reported in this Las Vegas incident, it's a little too, as ridiculous as this is gonna sound to some people. It's just a little too sensational for me. Um, but the very topic, by its very nature, is sensational, right? It's inherently sensational.
yeah, for sure.
But the one thing that I want to end with, though, and this is a point that I really want to drive home. The UFO community is, by its very nature, a very divided um, community. It's every bit as divisive and tribalistic as politics is. Politics and religion. It is, for many people, it is like its own religion kind of thing. And there are some people that have established themselves as uh, not just skeptics but debunkers, and there is a difference between a skeptic and a debunker. Skeptics tend to be open-minded, but they just need to see scientific data and evidence to back up the extraordinary claims, whereas a debunker has already made up their mind. Nothing you show them, they're going to be suspicious of everything, and no matter what you show them, their mind is made up from the get-go, and they're going to just say it's all a bunch of nonsense. And so you've got a lot of people like that. And of course, anytime you have a polarizing figure like David Grusch, you're going to have people coming out of the woodwork that are going to be going into high gear to really discredit uh, and to really kind of try to take the wind out of the sails of the whole, that particular issue moving forward. And what I would say to people who feel discouraged by the constant chorus of people saying this is all bullshit, it's all nonsense, there's nothing to see here, It's all just, a P.T. Barnum like spectacle. There's a sucker born every minute, and you all are a bunch of suckers for believing in it. You know, it's easier said than done, but for those of you that truly do believe that there's something substantial behind the things that David Grusch has been claiming, or more so, if you happen to be an experiencer of a UFO or UAP phenomenon. I myself am not one, but take comfort in knowing that there are a lot of people out there that are on your side. There are a lot of people that do believe, that do just simply want to know the truth, and that don't want to get bogged down and mired down in all of this political, these little fiefdoms that get set up, and people wanting to be the big fish in the small pond. um, that's an inherently a human flaw, and you're going to come across people that are going to be bullies. You're going to come across people that are just going to be assholes for the sake of being an asshole. um, and what I would say is, have patience, be patient, and find the people that are like you, that have that hope, because that's what this ultimately comes down to, is hope, that there is something greater than us in the universe. And I think there is. Um, Whether that's ETs or interdimensional, I do not believe at all that we as human beings are alone in this universe. I don't believe we're alone in this existence. And there are some people that are going to view this notion of extraterrestrial or interdimensional non-human uh, beings actually being a real thing, that are going to they're going to have a serious amount of fear and trepidation, because they have never seriously taken that into consideration as even being possible. you know um and I'm not saying this to be a smartass, but imagine if there were a scenario where you got a person who's been an atheist, a staunch atheist all of his life, and lo and behold, the second coming of Christ actually happens, and he's like, holy shit, this was actually real. That's kind of what that day is going to be like for people that have been so adamant about extraterrestrials visiting the earth and there being intelligent life elsewhere. That's going to be exactly the kind of level of having their world turned inside out and upside down. So you have to be patient. And there are some of these debunkers and skeptics that are very snarky. They're not very nice. And I've never understood why people have a need to have to be that way. And of course, coming from New York, that's what New Yorkers are known for. New Yorkers are known for being cynical and sarcastic and, smartasses and things like that. And for a lot of us, that's kind of a point of pride, being wise guys. But there are some people that, unfortunately, the way that they operate is to tear other people down, to shoot people and what they stand for, even ideas that are just going to, make fun of you, mock you, berate you, tease you. And what you have to do, and this is one of the great pieces of advice that I remember Michelle Obama giving one time. And just for everybody out there, I am neither Republican or Democrat. I think both parties are stupid and so far out of touch with the American politics and the American people that neither major party has anybody's best interest but their own in mind. So, bearing that in mind, when Michelle Obama, I mean, she said, when our opponents go low, that's becomes all the more important for us to go high. Take the high road, because people are always, and that's one of the things that social media has done, is it's created an environment where it's the in thing to do to pile on and shame people and mock and embarrass, ruin people's lives just because they think different from you. They Maybe they go to a different church and have a different religious or spiritual view. They maybe don't have the same education as you. They don't look the same as you, dress the same as you. Um, in my experience, I deal with an awful lot of really mean, nasty people that don't like the kind of music I that I that I am passionate about. And so there's mean people, there's bullies, there's there's assholes everywhere you look. And you have to, as hard as it is at times, you have to rise above it. You have to rise above the things that anger you to really truly make forward progress. And you can call it, having to have the strength to forgive people, because a lot of these people are doing this in complete ignorance. They are so closed minded, they don't open themselves up to the consideration of thinking any other way. There are people that just automatically think that, Roger and I having this conversation means that we're just, a bunch of, crazy nut jobs. And to some people, we probably are. And you know what? I'm okay with that,
Yep.
because what they think of me ultimately doesn't matter. It's what I think of myself, and it's what the people who matter the most to me and the people that I love, what they think of me. And actions always, always speak louder than words. And so just bear that in mind. We're in for some very tumultuous times ahead, I think. And I'm not saying that to be a doomsayer, or, to cast a black shadow, dark shadow over, life in general. But um, I think that we're going to see some things come out, both within this UFO field and elsewhere. I mean, we've got both former President Donald Trump and current President Joe Biden are being accused of all kinds of things. And quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if they're both crooks. But, stuff like that is only going to serve to divide people. And so what we should be looking to be doing is finding allies, finding people who are not like that, finding people who are not the ones tearing others down, who are taking the high road. I mean, you can find them everywhere. You can find people that are just having all kinds of abuse heaped upon them. And I have to go back to the guys at Skinwalker Ranch, because I'm fortunate enough to have met all of them and have had many conversations with them in person and elsewhere. And this is a team, because of the high profile work that they're doing via their TV show. Um, these guys get all kinds of, skeptics and nasty people. And I'm not even going to mention who the names are, but most of you probably know who they are. And, my first reaction as a New Yorker is to just, go off on these guys that are, saying these, unnecessarily unkind and baseless accusations, um, against people like the guys that are there at Skinwalker Ranch, who both you and I know, Raj, that are very, they're very decent human beings, above whatever credentials they may or may not have. We've met them. They are good, honest people. And they are doing this not for the purpose of self-aggrandizement. They're doing it because they truly believe in the work that they're doing, trying to figure things out. And I I want to give some kind of latitude to most people out there that are doing that. I don't agree with everything Dr. Stephen Greer comes out with, but I think that in his heart, he comes from a place of sincerity. But it's okay to disagree with people. I don't agree with everything that, even some of the people that I admire the most. I may not be in lockstep with everything that they have as a viewpoint, and I'm sure it's the same with them for me. And I don't expect everybody to be that way, because that's what makes us different. That's what makes each of us unique. And we have to always remember that it's okay to have a difference of opinion. It's okay to view the world through a different lens. And what I would say to people that are getting discouraged, that feel like that it's nothing but a big dumpster fire, this especially on UFO Twitter, where holy cow. It's an entertainment form of its own kind at times, unfortunately, and not always for a positive way. But um, take courage in each other. Find strength in each other. Find those people who have had those experiences, and find out that maybe you're not alone. And that's the whole reason why Roger and I are doing this Soul of the Unexplained, is to destigmatize and to get people to be willing to have those conversations that we're maybe afraid to have, to talk about things that we just don't understand. Um, and that's the thing that Roger and I have tried to do, is create this safe space, as it were, where that those conversations can be had. And so just folks, don't get discouraged. Take the high road. Whenever you're confronted by people that are being trolls or being nasty, just follow the example of people like Eric Bard, who just simply, you know, roll their eyes and just simply, keep their focus on what they're doing, because that is what matters. You know,
Yeah.
don't let people tell you that you don't belong and that your voice doesn't matter and that your experience doesn't matter, because it does matter. And anybody who tells you otherwise has their own agenda and has their own insecurities. And feel pity for them. Don't feel anger. Don't feel anger for people that, are the most vocal out there against things like Skinwalker Ranch, and that make the accusations that this is all a money grab for Brandon Fugel. And, it's just another opportunity for Travis Taylor to get out there in front of, get his name out there. I mean, I've never gotten that impression about either Brandon or Travis, but, people are entitled to feel that way. And when they feel that way, I don't feel, I mean, I feel a little bit of anger because that's the New Yorker in me, but I pity them. I don't stay angry at them for long, and I don't engage with those people, because those people, why cast your pearls before swine? The old saying, and I'm not calling them swine. Uh, well, maybe a few of them I am. but but I think you know what I mean. It's just take the high road. Don't get baited into these discussions that just literally go nowhere. And that's what these people feed on. These people feed on being able to expose and just really make people as miserable as they are and dash the hopes. And that's not to say that there are some skeptics out there that their voice is really important, and sometimes they bring up very valid points. But don't let egos get in the way. Don't be your own worst enemy, and don't give those people that are set to tear down determine the path that you're going to walk. That's the best advice that I can offer. And I say that partially because I have to remind myself of doing that same thing, because I've dealt with bullies and mean people all of my life, whether it's dealing with my religion or I had a mother when I was growing up. My mom was a very prominent public official, so I got a lot of grief, collateral bullying that occurred with that. The music that I do, the music that I listen to. When you're an artist, you always kind of put your heart on your sleeve when you're doing music, and I dealt with a lot of unnecessary, um, really mean and vile people. And what those people want to do is they want to see a reaction. They want to get a reaction. And the best thing you can do is when they come looking for a fight, don't give it to them. I mean, and that's hard to do, especially people like me that are fighters. It's sometimes it's hard to swallow that pride and turn the other cheek and just simply walk away. But that's it's something that Caleb and Eric have always talked about. From Skinwalker Ranch, is that importance of elevating the discourse. Be better than the things that are trying to cast everything in such a bad light. And so that's what I'll end on. Roger, I'll give you, I'll let you have your final say there, but that's just what I wanted to say. And thank you everybody who has come into our world lately in this last year. Jeff Freeman, all the amazing Skinwalker Ranch insiders, of course the team at Skinwalker Ranch that have been so welcoming and so approachable. I mean, just it's really
100%.
it's been one of the positive things in my life over all the losing my parents over the last 2 years. It's been one of the few things that has been a beacon of light that I've been able to gravitate towards and stay well grounded. And so thank you to everybody that's been playing a role in helping the soul of the unexplained get out there, and that have interacted with us and shared stories with us. Um, just thank you to everybody. So Raj, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, no, I think very well said, Jim. And yeah, I'll echo the same sentiments. It's takes a lot more energy to be angry and channel that anger and rage than it does to just take the high road. And really just be confident in yourself and know that you matter. And right, other people that try to tear you down, just ignore them. It's not worth your time, and it's not worth the energy, because it'll just pull you down. There's so many things to be excited about, and yeah, that's what we're here for the Soul of the Unexplained, to create a safe space to talk about all these topics, um, from paranormal, UFOs, cryptids, you name it. So again, really appreciate all of our listeners and all of the great people, like Jimm said, that we've met over the past years. Looking forward to getting to know even more people. And yeah, thanks for listening in. Thanks for listening to Jimm and I and our fun thoughts on all things paranormal. So everyone stay safe and have an absolute fabulous day or week, wherever you are, whatever time of the day. We love you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Raj. We'll be coming at you next time with hopefully another exciting guest, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. All right, folks. Thanks a bunch. Take care. We will see you next time. See ya.